All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have the great pleasure today of speaking to the most progressive candidate for in Texas for senator going against Ted Cruz. And before I speak to Sema Hernandez, who's a brilliant woman, and I'm just very honored to speak with her, I want to let everybody know that I have my latest book out. It's called Debunking the Trump-Russia Myth. The link is below. It's doing quite well. And let's get to the interview. If you can just let us know if you can hear us in the chat, if you can't, or if there's any sound issues. But Sema, thank you so much for agreeing to for the interview.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I did not expect for an interview to come out of going on Twitter and sharing and back and forth with other progressives. They said to go on H.A. Goodman show and go on other progressive channels. So here we are.
Well, before we get into the kind of issues with Justice Democrats and why you're better than your opponent, tell us a little bit about Sema Hernandez. Why are you running to become senator of Texas? Do you think you can defeat Ted Cruz? Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Sema Hernandez, but the name my mother gave me is Sema Hernandez, or Ramirez. Hernandez is my maiden name. So I grew up in a migrant family. My parents immigrated from Mexico. I'm the first generation born in the United States, born in Houston, Texas. And I grew up with my family mostly working in the crops, picking oranges and tomatoes, watermelons, living a very hard, difficult life that they sacrificed a lot for us, for their future generations. So I go into this knowing full well that I'm an outsider. I'm a mother of four, been married to my husband for almost 14 years. I'm a baseball coach. I'm a community organizer. I have a few projects in the works here locally, and I'm an activist for immigrant rights, human rights, here in the city of Pasadena, Texas, speaking up a lot at different protests. And I've noticed that in the last 32 years that I've been alive, nothing has ever changed. Everything has been progressing as incremental change. And we don't have time for that anymore. So in order to guarantee our children and their children's children a better future, we need to go in with actual real people running in Congress and represent the actual people that are the working class, which is now the working poor. So I go into this race knowing who my opponents are, knowing that the Democratic establishment is not on my side. They have shut me out of everything. And I still run, and I didn't get into this race with the intention of losing or dropping out.
Were you influenced or motivated by Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein, or was there any kind of what motivated you to start to run for Senate?
Well, if you remember, like many of us remember, Bernie Sanders said that we need a government that works for all of us. And in order for the political revolution to take off, we need regular people, moms, dads, lawyers, doctors, teachers, activists to run. And I took that to heart because no one's going to stand up for people like me other than people like me. And so going into this, I thought, well, maybe I can do this. And when I was called by a representative from Our Revolution last year, they said, we need people like you to run. And I thought, I don't think I could ever run because I'm an outsider. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a lot of money, and I don't have political experience. So they said to me, I don't have to have political experience. It's just that I have to do what's right for the people that I'm running to represent. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and run. But it took me a few months to realize what position I wanted to run for. And it was only after the Bernie Sanders debate between him and Ted Cruz about Medicare for All that I found myself yelling at the TV and telling Ted Cruz all kinds of words that I'm not going to repeat. And I said, somebody's got to take this fool down. And the only person that I can think of that would do it is Bernie Sanders. But he's not in Texas. He's not running in Texas. So I thought, I have medical experience. I know what the hell I'm talking about. I know what's going on. I don't tell people congratulations on your MS or congratulations on your illness or on your cancer. I know what it's like to suffer and to tell loved ones that their family member is no longer alive and have to put that person in the morgue.
How have Republicans, well, I'll get to the Democrats in a second, but how have Republicans failed the people of Texas in your mind? Or how has Ted Cruz failed the people of Texas?
Well, I think that it's his ties to big oil, his corporate donors, and his religious ideology that he keeps pushing forward upon the rest of the people of Texas by taking away our reproductive rights, taking away our health care, and not caring or giving a damn about climate change. Now, Harvey just happened about 2 months ago. The entire city of Houston was virtually underwater. I was underwater. Water came in through our roof. Water came in through our doors. And we went out into the street to take people out of their homes where the water came up to my chin. I was 5 feet of water. And after the water recedes, what happens? All we see is these politicians coming in saying that they're going to help us. They do a publicity stunt. They're going to help us. But they don't tell us how to get access to the money so we can start rebuilding our homes, so we can get back to normal or better. So they have failed us in so many ways. It's oppressive. It's racially dividing us in so many ways, where it's black versus white and white versus brown. It's the Trump presidency has emboldened a lot of Republicans to push a lot of oppressive legislation in the state of Texas alone. And when asked about SB4, Senate Bill 4, it's a bill that if you're an immigrant or you look a certain way, if you're brown, that the police have the right to ask you for your documentation. And if you don't have it, they can deport you. They can put you in an ICE holding cell, and you have to have proof of your residency or citizenship or some kind of paperwork where it states that you are here legally. And if not, then you get deported. And Ted Cruz said nothing about it. He said that's the law.
What happened to, so are you still, was your house flooded, and are you still rebuilding everything right now?
We're still rebuilding. Some of our walls had to come down. We had water coming in through our roof. We're still struggling with the insurance claims. FEMA did come in and help us, but it's not enough to repair the underlying mold that's underneath our floors. And we're taking that one step at a time. A lot of people lost their entire homes, so I consider myself lucky because I didn't get as much water as other people did. A lot of people lost everything. I lost my car, but the car can be replaced. But that surely does make it difficult for someone like myself who doesn't have the means to go out and campaign, much harder to do so. And I also don't want to burden people in the city of Houston, Corpus Christi, Rockport, to ask them to donate to me when I know themselves they're rebuilding just like I am.
When that kind of thing happens, what is this? So you mentioned the state of Texas isn't really helping. It's more of a photo op. What exactly? So you almost lost your house. You did lose your car. How has either Ted Cruz, or I should say, how has the state of Texas helped somebody who experienced, losing their home from the hurricane?
Well, if you're undocumented, they don't help you. If you do not have proper documentation that you're here legally, they will not help you. They're only helping people that have citizenship status or resident status, and it's very limited to what they do. So they're leaving a lot of Black and brown communities unattended. They're leaving them to fend for themselves. Now, I know that the city of Houston, their mayor, is trying to get as much money out of Governor Greg Abbott so it could help reimburse all the expenses. But then there's the issue of, where is that money going to go to once the city gets it? Is it going to be allocated in the proper way? Is there going to be forums for these organizations to go in and help these Black and brown communities to rebuild? There's still a lot of people that are homeless. And I feel like it's a very slow process.
Tell me about how the Democratic Party, so we know that the Republican Party definitely, has not addressed the needs of many citizens. How has the Democratic Party responded, and have they dropped the ball?
In the state of Texas in general? Okay, so in the Texas legislature, it's mostly ruled by Republicans. It's traditionally always been that way. So it's harder for Democrats to get any process, any progress done with these legislative bills. So it takes a lot for us activists to go and call these people, sit in their offices and protest outside. But we do it anyway. We do it because we want to put the pressure on not just Republicans, but Democrats to remind them that when it comes to re-election, they're going to get voted out.
Tell me about why Sema Hernandez is better than her challenger.
Oh, goodness. There's so many differences between him and myself. One, I didn't grow up rich. I grew up very poor.
Well, first off, let's talk. So who is your challenger?
Oh, his name is Robert Francis O'Rourke. And he is a congressman, a sitting congressman from El Paso, Texas in District 16. He is from what the research that I've done and many of the activists have done, he is a businessman, an investor, someone who served on city council and used his position of power to further gentrify the city and burden the Black and brown communities, especially the brown communities in El Paso, Texas, and using his position to influence the votes on behalf of his father-in-law, who owned Paso del Norte Group, which is a commercial development group in El Paso. And he says that his family wouldn't benefit, but we know very well that they always do. We've done the research, we follow the money to see where it goes. And right now, the city of El Paso is very upset with what's going on because they're still marginalizing the Latino community and bringing in new development and setting aside these mom and pop shops that have been there for years. Now, moving forward to how he's voted, traditionally, he's always voted for increase in military spending every single time.
Okay.
Also, he was also a Hillary Clinton superdelegate. And I know people say, well, in his defense, he was neutral. Like, you can be neutral, but you have to look at the facts of the candidate that you're backing. And
he was neutral as a superdelegate.
He was neutral as a superdelegate.
Okay. So he didn't he didn't go with Bernie. He just didn't take any side at all.
He didn't go with Bernie at all.
Okay.
At all, but he waited till the very last minute to endorse and to vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, when you look back and you look at the interviews he's done with the Texas Tribune, he said, he held out his vote and he voted for her because he thought that she was better at the position that she was running for than Bernie Sanders. Well, thinking back, I'm thinking, why would you vote for somebody who puts so many classified emails on a public server? That's compromising
absolutely.
National security. Why would you do that? That's a bad judgment call on the person you're endorsing.
Yeah.
That's terrible. To me, that's terrible. For me, my candidate's always been Bernie Sanders. And because he is someone that I can look up to as far as his policies and where he's stood for so many years. And he was the only candidate that took the time to go all the way to Florida, to Immokalee, Florida, which is where my grandparents and my mother picked oranges and tomatoes and picked watermelons in Immokalee, Florida. And it was about 30 minutes away from where I grew up and I graduated high school. So that man, Bernie Sanders, took the time to go out there and speak to the migrant workers that are getting paid starvation wages. Nobody else has taken the time to do that besides him. So I thought that's the person I'm going to vote for because he took the time that nobody else did to stand up for their rights.
You tweeted out, I passed the vetting process. Justice Dems rejected me because Texas U.S. Senate race is impossible to win. I doubt they will endorse me. Now, have they? So his nickname is Beto, right? Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, he's that's his nickname, supposedly.
And so this gentleman, has he been endorsed by Justice Democrats yet, or has that happened?
It hasn't happened yet, but if you do recall the interview with Rokana was on TYT prior to getting the endorsement for Justice Democrats.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when
And
I saw that,
Rokana got money from Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire Trump advisor, and
wow,
he had the Obama money machine behind him, but he says a lot of the right things, so Justice Democrats like him. But he's actually, Rokana's in the WikiLeaks emails. I did a whole bunch of segments on that, but
I saw them.
Is Mr. O'Rourke similar in terms of the big money?
When it comes to big money, in the past races that he's run for election and re-election, he's always accepted corporate donations, especially for for-profit healthcare. And that explains a lot of why he's hesitant to sign HR 676 Medicare for All.
So Justice Democrats might endorse a candidate who doesn't want Medicare for all?
Yes, that's exactly right. But he said if he was senator, he would vote for Bernie Sanders' bill. But then I'm thinking, you're a sitting congressman right now. Why aren't you voting for Medicare for All in the House bill HR 676 introduced by John Conyers? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Why don't you actually give a shit about what's going on with us? While we're out here busting our asses, paying for high deductibles and high premiums, you have no worry at all for yourself because your family's taken care of. So now why can't we have health care? Why can't we have Medicare for all?
So Beto O'Rourke has the chance to vote for single payer Medicare for all, and he won't do it. Did he explain why he won't do it?
He said because he wants for-profit health care to be reimbursed Medicare for all money, Medicare money. He wants for-profit to get reimbursed for their coverage from Medicare money.
Oh my goodness.
So we're giving more profits to for-profit healthcare, and that to me is unacceptable.
And the interesting thing about his Wikipedia page says Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke is an American Democratic Party politician. So generally, one would think that the Justice Democrats want to distance themselves from a hardcore Democratic Party politician, businessman. You said he's an investor, is that correct?
He is. His father-in-law has a development business in which he invests in these communities and puts in chain stores like Walmart.
So it's safe to say, whereas you've experienced, almost losing your house, losing your car from Hurricane Harvey, Mr. O'Rourke has not experienced any of the detrimental impacts from the hurricane. Is that safe to say?
That is pretty safe to say.
Okay. And in terms of the progressive voting base in Texas or issues important to Latinos and Black voters, would you say I can tell you the reasons right now just based on everything you've told me, but if people were going to ask, why is Sema Hernandez better for Latino voters, for Black voters, for Democratic voters, for progressive voters, for all people, white, Black, Asian, it really doesn't matter. Why are you better than Mr. O'Rourke?
Well, coming from a family that immigrated to this country and worked really, really hard to just make ends meet, I understand. I've seen the struggle. I've lived it myself. I've been discriminated against because I'm a Latino woman. I'm very outspoken. I have stood in protest with Black Lives Matter, and we share a lot of the similar discrimination, except that they've shared it in a way where, or they've experienced it in a way where they have been enslaved for years. And now we're trying to fight back against the white supremacy that has flourished in the Trump presidency, and seeing the way that Black and brown communities have struggled together. We have united and no longer see color amongst ourselves or the white people that are on our side. We've noticed that with the Trump presidency, everything that he's doing, it's cutting us down to a bare minimum. It's literally cutting us off at our knees.
And so how would you be stronger or better than Beto O'Rourke in terms of protecting the interests of progressive voters?
All right, so I myself have experienced discrimination and unworthiness, I guess you could say. I'm trying to think of the best way to word it without fucking up the answer. There isn't any right answer. But in the experiences that I've had, I want to make sure that nobody else experiences the poverty that I have, that has experienced the debt that I've had, and Beto O'Rourke has never experienced poverty like we have, us in the working class. He has never experienced homelessness, which we have, especially I have and my husband has. He has never experienced trying to decide whether you're going to pay your rent or pay for your medicine or pay for your vehicle and gas to get you to work or quit your job or get another job. He has never experienced that. And for me running for this office, I'm running to make sure that we do have a living wage, that we do have equal pay for equal work, that we do equal to a man. Because right now we're not getting paid the same as a man as a woman. Now think of as a woman of color, we're not getting paid the same. Our education, it's very valuable to me education-wise because we don't have the same opportunities as these millionaires do, where they can get into any college that they want to. We cannot. We have to actually get a student loan, apply for these schools. We don't get to pay our way through these schools so we can finish and get an education. We are getting deported in Latino communities, and we are getting targeted because of what we look like and the preconceived notion that we're criminals when we're not. Now, in the state of Texas, we're growing as a majority in the Latino community. The Mexican community, immigrants are taking over the state of Texas. And that's something that a lot of politicians are paying attention in Texas in 2018 to see how it's going to turn out, because Texas is reflective of the entire United States. Now, when I'm running for these things like ending the oil, I forgot what it's called. I'm running to make sure that we do have renewable energy, and I'll tell you why. I live 3 miles away from the nearest oil refinery. Now, imagine your loved one working there, and you're coming home from picking your kids up from school, or you're coming home from baseball practice or a baseball game, and your child sees a big plume of smoke and you think it's a rain cloud. And then your child tells you, Daddy works over there. And you are racing to that chemical refinery. And you have no idea how to explain to your child, if your loved one dies, why did they die? What happened?
Wow.
And the only thing that crosses my mind is it's because of these oil refineries, this big oil exploitation of our resources that we have, that is leading to a lot of deaths, a lot of cancer rates, pollution of our air, pollution of our water. There's been explosions at different platforms. There's been leaks in different areas. Just last week, there was about 100 or so gallons of oil spilled alongside the freeway where I live.
Wow.
And they said it was just a chemical spill. Now, we live near these things. These other politicians, they can buy land elsewhere. They can move. We cannot move. We're stuck. We deal with the consequences of what's going on because of these big oil giants are taking advantage of the Black and brown communities and building and refining this oil, polluting us, and the EPA and OSHA aren't doing anything about it.
You mentioned that you passed the vetting process for Justice Democrats. What was that vetting process like? What is the vetting process?
Okay, so it's just like you and me, we're talking. And they're getting to know me and getting to know my character and getting to know my stances on different positions of different legislation that is coming out of Justice Democrats. And I passed the vetting process, but the problem was.
So did you speak to somebody at Justice Democrats?
Yes.
Was it a phone conversation?
It was a interview like this, I guess virtual interview.
Like, okay, so like Google Hangout or something. Okay.
Yes. And then I graduated from that to a phone call. And from the phone call, I made it all the way to the top. So apparently it was a three-step vetting process. It was a phone call, video conference, and then another phone call. And once it got to that third phone call, they said to me, well, we love you. You're great. You're doing awesome things. You're going to run for Texas District 29. And I told him, no, I'm not. He says, yes, you are. I said, no, there's been some miscommunication. But the initial phone call that I got was because I was running against Ted Cruz. And they said, no, they told me you're running for 29. I said, no, I've already submitted someone else's information for that particular district. And they said, well, you know, you're running against Ted Cruz in a red state. I said, yeah, I am aware of what I'm running for. You don't have to tell me. I'm telling you. So it went from, well, you know, Texas is big. You're not going to win because it's a red state. And I said, I really don't care. He says, maybe you should think of a smaller office. I said, no. I said, well, have you thought about running as a Republican? I said, no. Why would I run as a Republican?
Why would they want you to run as a Republican?
Because it's an easier position to win if I run as a Republican.
They want you to run for Senate as a Republican in Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm progressive. I'm not regressive, so.
And why do you think eventually so they don't think you can win, but they think your challenger can win?
Well, when it comes right down to it, it comes down to money, because they said Texas is so big, it's red, it's going to take a lot of our resources to go through the entire state. So now Beto's showing up outraising Ted Cruz.
So it's all about money.
And now he's got the attention of Justice Democrats.
So at the end of the day, we are forced to listen to the baloney propaganda from Justice Democrats talking about how they're the big new voice. They've championed Bernie's movement and revolution. And they had a choice between Sema Hernandez, who literally has grown up and seen everything there is to see in terms of a progressive viewpoint, immigrants working hard, setting a life for herself and her family, experiencing the tragedy of the hurricane, you know, almost losing your house, losing your car, having to deal with the insurance companies, not being linked. So you're not linked to big business interest, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, you're not linked to.
I would be rolling in it if I was, but I'm not.
So
and if I was rolling in it, I would make sure other people can roll in it too.
So you are basically a person who is the epitome of what Bernie Sanders was talking about. And you've passed the Justice Democrats vetting process.
Yeah.
But because you're running against Ted Cruz, they don't want to spend the money on you, so they would rather go with a guy who doesn't have any of your experiences, is far removed from everything that you've experienced and talk about. But because he can raise a lot more money, they're going to endorse him and not you.
It looks that way.
Wow.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
So when Justice Democrats told me no, I said, that's fine. I'm just letting you know that I'm going to run with or without you. And they said, well, we're going to keep tabs on you to see how you do. We'll be in touch. We haven't been in touch since.
Why do you think you have, why haven't they reached out to you since?
I honestly don't know exactly, but I can maybe more or less say that they're changing the way that they're running Justice Democrats, and now they're looking to see who's going to bring in the money to help on every single race. And let's just say my opponent has a lot of money. Not only does he come from money, but he's spending other people's money to run.
What other people's money is Mr. O'Rourke spending?
The grassroots money that's been raised by people that people think that Beto O'Rourke is going to represent them.
So progressive voters in Texas who have experienced everything that Sema Hernandez has experienced, who have the same value system you do, and who live the daily life that you do, are voting for somebody simply because Justice Democrat says this guy is progressive, when he has basically not lived the life you've lived, won't even vote for single payer, and is tied to big business interests. Is that correct?
That's correct. And he has not fully supported the People's Platform. Actually, I can say for sure that he has not supported the People's Platform.
Why doesn't he? What about the People's Platform does he not support?
Everything from single payer to keeping it in the ground, from no fracking. So everything that you can imagine that is progressive, he
won't even ban fracking?
He won't even ban fracking.
Ay. So he won't ban fracking. He won't endorse single payer. He won't ban fracking. And then Justice Democrats endorses him, or will endorse him.
Well, it looks like they're going to endorse him. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's what I'm looking at. After watching that video from TYT, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the only thing that Justice Democrats has said, you don't have to agree with us on everything that's on our platform, but the only thing you have to agree is that you're not going to take super PAC money.
Yeah, they get away with that by very, very wealthy individual donors.
Mm.
And people apparently with a network of money, which is funny also because Ro Khanna did have a super PAC at one point. So
he did. But I guess it's, from now on, you can't accept super PACs.
So Beto O'Rourke doesn't have a super PAC, but he's pretty wealthy.
He's very wealthy. He's made a very big name for himself. He was born actually into a political family. His grandfather was a judge, and I think his father also ran for office and switched twice from Democrat to Republican, then back to Democrat again.
And he's running against Ted Cruz.
And he's running against Ted Cruz.
And the chances of him winning are the chances of me becoming an NFL starting quarterback.
I'm sure you can play football, but not as well as an NFL quarterback. Now, I will tell you this. When I decided to run, I made the call to the Texas Democratic Party. I actually made a phone call to the DNC first. And I asked them, what are we going to do about Ted Cruz? They said, we don't know, you have to call the Texas Democratic Party. And I did. I asked them, who are you running against, Ted Cruz? They said, we really don't know. It's between O'Rourke and Joaquin Castro. And I said, well, I don't know who they are. I said, in all due respect, I don't care.
While Joaquin Castro is basically like Hillary Clinton or Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
A lot of people defend him, and I'm like, no, he's not progressive. He looks progressive. He says the right things. But when you look to see where he stands on a lot of the issues, he's a centrist. He's another centrist. That's how he is. And I told the Texas Democratic Party, while Beto and Joaquin decide who's going to run, I'm calling to let you know that I'm running. I just need you to tell me where I have to file the paperwork. They said, well, we don't know. And they gave me the runaround. And I had to call to the Texas Secretary of State and ask them, I want to run for office. Where do I sign? Where do I fill out paperwork? What do I have to do? I was on hold on the phone for hours, day in and day out, over and over again for 2 weeks,
Oh my God.
back and forth. So I finally
They
said,
really,
you know what?
they really didn't want you to run, Sema.
They really didn't want me to find out how to do it. They figured, you know, she's ignorant, she's a Latina, she's this, she's that, you know, and I'm like, y'all have no idea who I am. I'm very persistent. I am very blunt about the things that I say I'm going to do, and I'm going to do them. I am relentless on a lot of the issues, and a lot of people get sick and tired of me because I never stop. And they say, well, she just never quits. And I'm like, I am never going to quit. So I called the Senate building in Washington, D.C. I told them, I need some information. Can you please tell me how I can run for office for U.S. Senate in Texas? They said, no problem. They gave me the links. They told me where to file. In 20 minutes, they showed me, they told me, they said there's YouTube videos on how to file as well.
So who
and it never
told you, whereas everybody was stonewalling, and who eventually told you?
It was someone that answered the phone at the Senate Capitol building.
Oh my God.
So that's how I got through, and I filed. I filed, and I said, well, after I filed, what do I do? They said, you can go and raise money. I said, hot damn, how the hell do I do that? So being that I've never ran before, this is my first time running for office.
So how can people right now watching, and you know, hopefully you share this video, I'd be honored if you did, but how do people help Sema Hernandez run for Senate?
I have a website. It's semafortexas.us. And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sema for Texas. And you can also find me on CrowdPack. And if you could do me the favor of endorsing, that would be great.
Are there any, and I'll definitely get back to the issue of why you're better than Mr. O'Rourke, but are there any politicians, perhaps local, that have that you know, or that have perhaps endorsed you, or that might endorse you?
Current politicians sitting in office,
or past, past, current, you know,
anyone with ties to the Democratic establishment have literally turned their backs on me.
Wow.
So from our local Democratic office, she knows I'm running. I asked her for help to fill out paperwork way before I called the DNC, and she said she'd help me. And then she dropped me as soon as she found out Beto was running. And so he went to every single one of his events, and then she started pushing his events, just like the Harris County Democratic Party has ignored me, and the entire state of Texas has ignored me.
So the Democratic Party really is, they just stick to their own, and they don't want any progressive to kind of mess things up for them.
And that's very unfortunate, because the way that you bring about change within the Democratic Party and the way that you want to win these offices and get progressive policies in place is by letting the generation that's coming, these millennials, I'm on the late millennial spectrum, but millennials to start taking over these positions, because there comes a time where you have to let us to make sure that we get that change that we want to, but they're not wanting to give it up. They're not wanting to give up that power. We have so many people, so many activists, so many Bernie-crats, Greens that are getting involved in the political process, but we're being shut out. And you see it just like last week with the Rules Committee for the DNC.
Yeah, that's insane. Go on, I'm sorry.
Oh, they're purging. They're purging every single progressive person out of there. And I'm just appalled, because I've seen how the local Democratic Party works. And I thought, well, the real grassroots is here locally. That's the real grassroots of the party. But if it's in such disarray at the grassroots level, I can only imagine how it's happening at the top level of the Democratic Party.
So Rolling Stone wrote an article, Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz's punk rock problem, how a progressive congressman and former bassist from El Paso is threatening to unseat the Senate's most hated Republican. Number one, there's no chance O'Rourke wins in Texas, right?
I do not believe that he will win at
Okay,
all.
so there's pretty much no chance that a progressive, and if it's here, this punk rock bassist, whatever, I mean, it's Rolling Stone, so is going to beat Ted Cruz. If there's no chance that he's going to win, and they're trying to say, oh, well, Sema, there's no chance you'll win, then why don't they just go, because they know that they're not going to win with O'Rourke, why don't they rally around you, Sema Hernandez, who is the epitome of progressive values, or you're the epitome of a progressive candidate, and you would represent the voting base of people who want, you know, the policies that you advocate. Why? You're a Latina who is running for Senate in Texas. You obviously have experienced things that this gentleman has not, in terms of the immigrant experience and in terms of just the ravages of the consequences of Hurricane Harvey, you know, just like a normal citizen who've experienced, you know, who's experienced the hurricane. Why don't they rally around somebody like you? Why are they putting so much money behind this guy who they know is going to lose?
Well, when it comes right down to it and you get through all the BS, it's just maintaining their status quo, maintaining their status. They don't care if they lose. They just want to make sure that they keep regular people out of the political process, because that does destroy their financial benefit.
And how do they benefit? How do you think Justice Democrats benefits from endorsing a man with ties to a great deal of money? So they get out of it by this vapid, childish, well, it's not a super PAC, but, you know, a billionaire Republican can donate to one of their candidates and it's okay. How do they get out of people saying, hey, this is a bunch of nonsense? Wealthy people or a wealthy family has donated to Beto O'Rourke's campaign, whereas Sema Hernandez is actually grassroots trying to raise money. How do they get out of people not realizing the truth, what's going on?
Well, I don't know how they get away with it, but I will tell you that there's a lot of Justice Democrats candidates that have been endorsed by Justice Democrats, and I know them. I've marched with them. I communicate with them on it, if not daily basis, but, you know, every now and then I do communicate with them. Now, they are real progressives, but when it comes to somebody with Democratic ties, corporate ties with corporate donors, who's coming in to unseat someone like Ted Cruz, it raises some eyebrows, because then what are you really trying to replace? If you're backing another corporate Democrat who is not even endorsing healthcare, Medicare for all, who's not endorsing Tulsi Gabbard's bill to stop arming terrorists, who keeps voting for wars, for increase of the military budget. How do you get away with that? It's making sure that they are aware of what's going on, making sure that the voters are aware that this is what's going on. The people who are watching TYT, be careful of who they're pushing upon you, because once they push another corporate Democrat upon you, then everything falls apart. It's a lie. But I will campaign, and I will lift, you know, another candidate who is a progressive Justice Democrat. I just don't know if I could fully give my thumbs up to Justice Democrats after they endorse someone like O'Rourke. I had my doubts when it came to Ro Khanna, because I did some research on him, and again, he had ties to corporate donors in Silicon Valley and a lot of funding to Hillary Clinton and her campaign, and then the WikiLeaks emails. So that did raise some eyebrows. But then you see him speaking up against someone like Dianne Feinstein, but he fails to speak up when it comes to Nancy Pelosi. So if you're going to be progressive on anything. Don't fake it. Actually do it. I don't think that TYT can actually explain why they would endorse O'Rourke if he does not represent the values of a progressive.
Well, Cenk, look, I mean, my views on TYT have been pretty well known. I mean, there are some people like Jimmy Dore that I love, I think is great, but I think Cenk Uygur is the biggest phony in politics, and I think the TYT brand is just there as a subsidiary of CNN to get people who have been hurt by Bernie Sanders being cheated, to kind of rally them back into the fold, back into the Democratic Party, to vote for eventually any Democrat. It doesn't matter who, which is what TYT did with Clinton. They pretended not to. Cenk Uygur said, "Oh, you know, I might not vote for Clinton." He was always going to vote for Clinton. Then he signs like a $20 million deal. And I think Justice Democrats is also a kind of somewhat of a money laundering, maybe not officially. I wouldn't say it's technically a money laundering scheme, but I think that what they do is they benefit financially, or at least they benefit in terms of their brand by having a person like O'Rourke, and unfortunately not a true, real progressive like you, Sema Hernandez. I just think that if you have any organization that prides itself on furthering Bernie Sanders' revolution, what is more revolutionary than having a person like Sema Hernandez? And what's more groundbreaking than a person like you who will push for single payer, whereas O'Rourke is not going to? I still can't wrap my head around he won't back Medicare for all.
He won't do it. And I stopped watching Cenk Uygur or Yogurt, whatever you want to call him. I stopped watching him the moment he said that he voted for Hillary Clinton. And he started blaming Trump supporters for Trump presidency. And I have friends who voted for Trump. I do.
So do I.
I have friends who voted for Hillary. I have friends who voted for Jill Stein, just like you and I did. I have friends who voted for the other guy who cannot seem to point out where Syria or Libya is.
Yeah. Libertarian, yeah.
I forgot what his name was. Yes, a libertarian. And, you know, my point of view is you voted, but also know who you voted for. Now, did we learn anything? Sure, but Cenk had the opportunity to open up the platform that he has and introduce the other two candidates for president, and he didn't do so. Irresponsibly, he didn't do so because he's pushing the two-party system, and that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not a democracy. Exactly. Now, I would like for the debates to be open. To have a true democracy, open up the debate. Open them up. There is nothing wrong with being challenged on your platform. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what a democracy is. You offer someone a choice on how to vote. Now, in Texas, I'm running as a Democrat because those are the only two parties I can run in. I can run in as a Green, which it's still not off the table. It's definitely on the table. But I'm going to keep pushing through the primary. And if I lose, which I doubt that I will, and I'm pretty sure that my opponent will not win in the general election if he makes it through, it's going to be egg on their face again. Because here we go again. You had a choice, but you went with somebody who's raised more money instead of looking at their value system, their morals. You didn't research very well how he's done business or voted in the past. So he fooled you once as council member. He fooled you again as House of Representative. Now you're telling me he's on our side, but he fails to vote for Medicare for all. You're twisting Ted Cruz's arm every single day to vote our way, and we know he's not on our side. So now you're going to be twisting someone else's arm who supposedly is on our side to vote for these things. I mean, come on. I'm not going to spend all this time twisting someone's arm who says that they're on my side when they're not.
Well, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. And please let everybody know again how they can donate to your campaign. And if, let's say, they just can't really donate any money, how else can they help you?
Well, they can help by sharing. They can help by phone banking. They can sign up on semafortexas.us. There is a volunteer form where they can do phone banking and do social media. They can do block walking in the area if they're nearby. They can be someone who is on the ground organizing locally in the state of Texas, they can contact me. They can email me. We can stay in touch. I'm very accessible. I don't have a team of people surrounding me.
Have any Latino organizations in Texas helped you, or have you reached out to any that perhaps might not be purely political?
So far that I've reached out for endorsements or for help, I haven't reached out to any of them. I know that some of them are nonpartisan. They don't usually endorse, but after speaking with a lot of the people that are here locally that are grassroots activists, I know that I do have their support when it comes down to it, that they will not only vote for me, but they will volunteer and they will do the block walking and door knocking.
I guess the last question is, why do you embody the spirit or principles of Bernie Sanders and his revolution better than O'Rourke?
Well, like I said, for so many years, I have seen the devastation from the time where I could speak to the time now. I've seen nothing has changed. And I want to keep running for the principles and the issues that we need to bring forth, like universal healthcare, college for all, that we end eminent domain, even though that it's very hard to do. We need to do that. That way, these corporations don't use the government as ways to take over our lands and start drilling in our property.
And what's O'Rourke's stance on eminent domain?
Oh, he used eminent domain while he was city council member to push for redevelopment of a majority Latino community, to take the mom and pop shops out for redevelopment for a more up and coming neighborhood. Gentrification is what he did in the city of El Paso. So now he wants to use eminent domain and end it so Trump doesn't build the border wall. And I'm like, well, that's great. You've changed it now to benefit your election. But you had no problem tearing down, someone's business that they've had for over 20 years.
And how many Latino citizens were forced to move because of the business venture pushed by O'Rourke?
Well, it was about, I want to say more than 30 acres.
Wow.
So it was many businesses that were in an area called El Segundo Barrio, which is the second barrio in El Paso. And they're still fighting about it now and protesting because they've said that they are not for sale and they do not want to sell their property. So, and O'Rourke's father-in-law is still involved in that. He's still involved in that. Now, he has never experienced being targeted or going to jail or being prosecuted and getting sentenced behind bars for years. He hasn't, because he's gotten away with a lot of things. He hasn't been prosecuted for the time where he was drunk driving, and they...
Who is this? O'Rourke or somebody else?
O'Rourke.
So O'Rourke
He wasn't prosecuted.
Was caught drunk driving, but no biggie.
Yeah, no biggie. Well, if it would have been someone like myself, it would have been someone, black or brown, they would have been pulled over and shot at.
Anyone caught drunk driving, that's it. You have to go to court, and it's, you lose a lot.
Yeah.
So he was actually caught drunk driving?
Yes, it was a few years ago during the election.
Is this documented?
It's documented. It's in one of the articles that I linked up. And it shows that he was arrested, but they didn't prosecute him at all. So he has no idea what it's like or the fear that we have, because we don't have that get out of jail free card like he does. He doesn't understand.
Did he even spend any time in jail after being, like, the day or the night that he was caught drunk driving? Did they send him, like, for a couple hours in jail as they were processing any information, or no?
The article didn't say that.
Okay.
All it said is that he wasn't prosecuted.
Wow. So here's a guy who is against single payer, has a drunk driving incident, and he's tied to a lot of money. In terms of eminent domain, he is linked to Latino citizens and their businesses being kicked out of, 38 acres, you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he also wasn't prosecuted for a college prank of breaking and entering into someone's home.
Oh my God. So wait, that he was caught also for breaking and entering?
Yes, and he said it was a prank.
Is this documented as well?
It's also documented in one of the articles that I linked up.
So nobody can say that, oh, on H.A. Goodman's channel, Sema Hernandez was making things up. This is all, like, you can find.
Documented.
Wow.
You can find it online looking up Beto O'Rourke, and you will see a few articles, his arrest record. You will see his political history of his family ties. You will see the eminent domain arguments whenever he was city council member and the accusations of him.
So he's been technically arrested twice. Was he arrested for the breaking and entering?
He was, and then he was let go.
So he was arrested twice that we know.
Yes. And if it would have been someone of black or brown color, they wouldn't have done that to him. They would have put him in jail, shot him, said they were afraid for their life, and they would have shot him.
So do we know if he's been arrested more than twice, or is 2 times what we know?
2 times is all that we know.
Wow.
So running for this position is, how can somebody say that they're going to represent us when they have no idea what we go through on a daily basis?
That's true. I'm still getting over the fact that he was arrested twice. and Justice Democrats. So it's interesting. You pass the vetting process for Justice Democrats, and they're like, no, we're going to go with O'Rourke. How do you pass the vetting process if you've been arrested twice?
Their vetting process must not be that very, tight, or it must be flawed.
I guess they allow certain candidates to run if you've been arrested twice.
Well, in this particular case, when it comes to Beto, I guess that's what it comes down to. But not everyone has an arrest record like him, and not everyone that's a Justice Democrat has.
Of course, no, and I guess for the record, there are a lot of Justice Democrat candidates that are, great progressive candidates, and I'm sure they're wonderful.
Yeah. They are very wonderful, which surprises me as to why TYT would allow someone like Beto, give him a platform to speak about what he's supposedly representing, but has no idea what we go through, instead of having someone such as myself or other progressives who are thinking about running for this position, have them on there on TYT. Why give him a platform and not give someone like myself a platform who had passed the vetting process? Or is this the audition prior to the endorsement?
So if I tweet out after this interview, hey, Justice Democrats, why might you endorse somebody who's been arrested twice, as opposed to somebody who's been arrested twice against single payer, as opposed to Sema Hernandez, who's the epitome of Bernie's revolution? Would that be an accurate tweet?
That would be a very accurate tweet. And if you'd like, I will send you the links later via Twitter.
Well, just tweet them out. Tweet out the links.
I tweeted them out about maybe sometime around maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. I tweeted it out.
Oh yeah, I'll check. Or you just retweet them, and I'll check. And so, okay, I'm going to go ahead and tweet that out, what I just said, after this interview. And Sema, I really hope that not only you win, but I hope that the people who are watching right now, I hope that they do everything possible to ensure that Sema Hernandez and her run for Senate in Texas. You need a Rolling Stone article. You need TYT to speak with you, even though I don't like the TYT brand, but you need all of that support. And I just think you're absolutely wonderful, everything that you've talked about, and I wish you the best. And thank you so much for the discussion today.
Well, before we leave, I want to say one more thing. An article was written about me from Jordan Sheridan's Truth Against the Machine. He wrote an article, or the reporter wrote an article, and they published it. So it came to a huge surprise when I saw Beto O'Rourke on TYT. I'm like, does he not speak to Jordan Sheridan? And doesn't Jordan Sheridan speak to Shank or anyone from TYT to let them know, there's already a progressive running. We did an article on her. Why haven't you read it? Why haven't you seen that Beto hasn't endorsed Medicare for all? You know, and it kept crossing my mind. I'm like, what the hell is going on over there? But
well, there's a lot going on. If you watch my channel, Hard Bastard is another channel. It's an interesting name, but he has a lot of, he's a really brilliant guy, and he has a lot of segments exposing the Young Turks. And I've done a lot in terms of trying to expose Justice Democrats for what they are. But and I look, there are some good candidates that they endorse, but I think that I think ultimately they're about, you know, money, trying to piggyback and take over Bernie's revolution to where they would even think of endorsing somebody who's been arrested twice, who was against banning fracking and against single payer. So I'll add that in the tweet as well. Beto O'Rourke is against banning fracking.
If he hasn't endorsed it on the People's platform, he's against it. And he hasn't endorsed anything on the People's platform.
Unbelievable. Sema, thank you so much for this great discussion.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm hoping I didn't piss a lot of people off.
Well, it's good. You know what? It's good if you did. And if you did, too bad for them, because you haven't said anything. You've only been 100% truthful. You haven't said anything wrong. And I think that honesty is what's needed in today's world, where I guess some people think a progressive is a person who is against single payer. I mean, at least with me, you know, I've been kind of moving independent, not kind of distancing myself from from labels, just because I see what happens to real progressives like you from other people who were kind of establishment. And then I see the establishment moving in on what Bernie Sanders and his movement used to be. So now everything is just kind of changed. It's all, I guess, going back to the way it was before Bernie Sanders ran, which is sad.
Yeah, it's disheartening. And in order for a real political revolution to take place and take over, everyone needs to be involved. Everyone needs to be up in arms. We're at war in so many places, not just in foreign countries, but we're at war within our own communities. We're fighting for equality. We're fighting for justice. We're fighting to make sure that the corruption within our city ends. And that's my next challenge locally here. And a group of us, of parents, of baseball moms, dads, and baseball coaches are getting together and developing a league, but the city won't let us have any fields. And so vocal against the new mayor since day one, before he even took office. We did a protest, we did a press conference, we put the pressure on him since before he took office, because we knew the outgoing one was out, the new one was in, and it was all because of immigrant rights and SB4 and human rights and ICE coming into our city and using their authority to come into our schools and take our children away. So I'm fighting very hard on all different fronts, different battles. Sometimes people say I spread myself too thin. I said, well, at the end of the day, people are going to know that someone stood up for them, someone organized, or somebody joined them and amplified that voice. And I'm going to be that person. I'm going to be the one that stands up when nobody else does, or, you know, carries their voice to Congress, carries their voice to city council, carries their voice to wherever it needs to be taken. And, you know, establishment, watch out. I don't care if there's an R or a D next to your name. If you're corrupt, you're going down. That's just how it's going to be.
Well, you are awesome, and I really appreciate speaking with you, and thank you so much for taking the time for this interview.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sema. Thank you.